Hey NFL fans, this is Gary Greene, longtime sports handicapper and professional sports bettor here in Las Vegas for the past 35 years, and this is your Gary Wins videos, and this is your number 2 game of the 4 NFL games this weekend that will be played Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on Fox, between my Washington Commanders as they travel to Detroit, to Motown City, to take on the Detroit Lions. The Lions now a 9-point favorite to total 55.5. And for team totals, the Detroit Lions are 33 and the Washington Commanders are 23.5. Make sure you shop and get the best number, whatever side you're going to take there. But the Washington Commanders come off a nice road victory at Tampa Bay on a last-second doink field goal against Tampa Bay last Sunday. And they finished the season 6-3 now on the road. They are 13-5 overall. Detroit is 15-2, 7-2 at home. This game will be the highest total in an NFL playoff game since the Tampa Bay Kansas City Super Bowl, which was just above that at 56. And I can almost see this possibly hitting 56 because when you look at these 4 games on this weekend, 3 of them will be played in frozen tundras, basically very cold 20 to 25 type degree kickoff temperature games, where this is the one and only one that will be played on the fast track, no weather problems. This will be the smoothest game to watch, that's for sure. Now, when we look at the Lions, great news for them. They get their star running back, Montgomery, back. Obviously, they had no problems missing him with Jamar Gibbs really picking up the load, but always a much better situation this late in the season to have 2 running backs so one doesn't get worn out. As far as Washington, they had 5 losses this year. They lost by 17 in week number 1, Jaden Daniels' very first ever NFL start. They lost that game by 17. But other than that, this team has been in every single game this year. They lost by 7 against Baltimore. In Baltimore, and we know how good Baltimore is. By 1, they played Pittsburgh in a game they led almost the whole way and there was a couple crazy pass interference calls on back-to-back drives that enabled Pittsburgh to come out of there with a 1-point win. They lost by 8 at Philly, which again is no slouch to lose by 8 at Philly. Philly is very difficult to beat at home. And then they lost by 8 in a crazy game against Dallas that they just played poorly, no doubt about that. But the bottom line is all 5 losses, basically except the Tampa Bay game, covered this 9-point spread. So there was only one game all year that they basically lost by 10 points or more. Now when we look at the Detroit Lions, they lost twice at home. They lost to Tampa Bay by 4 and the Bills by 6. And then they won by 22-3-3, 46-38, 13-6. So basically 5 of their 9 games, more than half of their home games this year, folks, did not cover this 9-point spread that has been installed for this playoff game on Saturday night. Now for the Detroit Lions scoring at home, though, 26-16, again in a loss, 42-52-52, 23-34, 42 in a loss, and then 31. So they have pretty much no problem scoring at home. This team unleashes an arsenal of trick plays like no one else. And you wonder why more teams, especially the bad ones, this is why I rip on bad teams and why I don't bet bad teams, is because you have no philosophy of trying to do crazy things when you're going to get the shit beat out of you anyway. In this case, Detroit's a great team, and they're willing to gamble, but they're also willing to install tremendous trick plays that seem like they work at about 75-80% clip. Now, the situation here for the Washington Commanders, their quarterback Daniels, you know, I'm a Commander fan. I say Redskins a lot still. I wish it was still Redskins. But the bottom line, this kid's got ice in his veins. I've not seen this from anybody. And I'm a Kansas City Royals fan. And if you watch baseball your whole life, you will never see a player that smiles more than Salvi Perez, the catcher of the Kansas City Royals. Always smiling, always happy. Tremendous player. Well, this kid's in the same group. This kid's laughing. He didn't even jump up on the field goal immediately to win the game. He laughs in between on the breaks. He's having fun talking to the other team. It's unbelievable. Nothing is going to scathe this kid. So this Detroit Lions home crowd is one of the best in the league. But it won't do a thing to him. So that's a great advantage that the Washington team has now to have a quarterback of this stature that is this good, this young. Forget the rookie. He is not a rookie. He hasn't played like a rookie since after week 1. He had one game that he had a little bit off, and then maybe down the road he had another one where he was off. But for the most part, he has been ice in his veins, and this is a kid now. In the fourth, or going on fourth down, he's 8 for 8. 2 touchdowns, 7 first downs. This is going for it on fourth down. And then he missed one in the playoff game against Tampa Bay, which pass interference should have been called when Ertz was mugged in the end zone. So realistically, the pass was right there. It's not like he was even off in that situation. But the regular season, 8 for 8. He's got the number 1 quarterback rating on third and fourth downs combined, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, when you can do this, if you can do this, that means you can go on the road, and that's why they have been in every single game this year, bar none, the Rookie of the Year. Not even close. As far as, let's see what we got here. Okay, something's going to have to give here. This is interesting, okay? Detroit's offense is number 1 yards after the catch. I love Detroit. I love the receivers have for the whole year, like them last year. I was one of the guys squealing week after week about St. Brown, the wide receiver, being the most underrated receiver in the league. And now, of course, everybody knows, and he's a superstar. But this team's got a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. Fast. Williams so fast after the catch, breakaways. But 6.7 yards per catch, yards after the catch. Washington's defense, though, this one shocked me because this defense is nothing great. But number 1 allowing yards after the catch. Best in the league. They allowed only 5.1 yards per catch. So this means that those breakaways may not be as much, because the one thing Washington does that drives me nuts at times, when it's third down and say 5 or 6, they play way off the receivers. They do not want to get burned for big plays. They're playing bend but don't break. And for the most part, it's gotten them this far, so I can't really argue with it too much. But again, Detroit with 4 missing starters has basically gone blitz crazy. Okay, they have gone completely nutso with it. And the fact is that they are trying not to expose the depleted secondary that's vulnerable. Which, again, this is something Minnesota does without a depleted secondary. So it works at times. But this strategy, I think, will backfire a little bit as far as Daniels goes, because Daniels is so slithery in the middle of the pocket. Most other quarterbacks are a lot bigger. You can get your hand on him, knock him off balance. He seems to fly his way right through, and he'll make big runs. And he does it a lot of times on third and fourth down as well. So keep those chains moving. If you keep chains moving, you keep Detroit's powerful, loaded offense off the field. That's the only way Washington's going to win this game. They cannot be allowing the Detroit Lions to just run amok on them. They got to cut down on possessions the best that they can. But again, I think that when you blitz, I've seen Daniels get sacked 5, 6, 8 times in a game and still win the game. He doesn't fumble the ball. Now, knock wood, don't do it tomorrow on me, but the bottom line is, if you don't fumble the ball, a lot of quarterbacks do in this position. Last week, Baker Mayfield did it. So you can't fumble the ball, and he doesn't turn the ball over in that aspect. So it will be down to the Detroit defense whether or not the Washington Commanders upset them in this game. Washington's offensive line is not good. For the most part, it's a Houdini what Jaden Daniels is doing, because he's been sacked 51 times this year. So that's a lot of sacks to take. But the fact is that the last 4 weeks, the Detroit defense, using this crazy blitz scheme, they're allowing 307 passing yards per game. 307. That is absolutely horrific. Okay? Now, I expect that the wide receiver that's going to have the biggest day in this game is going to be Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver, underrated superstar of the Washington Commanders. I expect he's going to get 100 yards in this game, because there's nobody on the Detroit that's going to be able to cover him. And right now, he's got a great rapport with Daniels. They have a couple signals that they've used. I've watched it, and I know right away when they're going to him, and he's going to have a big day. No, regardless, this game should be more of a track meet than a low-scoring game. And then when we look at the Washington defense, one credit, and again, I'm surprised at this, but they have played pretty solid versus passing teams. Again, because they went into this bend but don't break, play back and don't give up the big plays. The last 4 weeks, they're only giving up 187 yards passing per game. When I gave you all those numbers earlier about Detroit, I had Detroit as my best bet when they were playing Tennessee at home. And if you just looked at the final score, you would have saw Detroit 52-14, whatever it was, some crazy blowout score. That game, if you go look at the stats, was the worst game of the year for the Detroit Lions offense. Goff had like 120 yards passing. So the bottom line is that you can slow Goff if you just continue to make them grind. You got to make them grind. And, of course, we know the crazy stuff that Detroit will do. Well, now the head coach of the Washington team does it too. They'll go for it a lot on fourth down. So you just got to make a stop here and there on fourth downs. But this is a whole different animal when you're playing that good against the pass and you're going to make other teams work for it. That's a big difference. Now, the referees could come into play here because the third worst refereeing crew as far as offensive holding, which means offensive line 90% of the time. It's going to be a receiver or tight end once in a while. But this crew, 17.1 flags per game. We might see a lot of yellow littered on the field in this game. The Lions, though, the second fewest in that position. So they do not do it. They have a tremendous offensive line, but only 14. The Redskins, the Commanders are number 21, which is actually the 16th most. Not terrible. Again, when you have a guy that's running RPO at quarterback, a lot of times you're going to end up giving sacks because you're not sure if he's running or passing, and they're already moving out up the field, so they're not overly blocking, and then he's susceptible in the backfield. But this is going to be a really good game. I'd be very interested to see if the Washington team runs the ball much. They have not run the ball well at all in the last month. Brian Robinson's on a milk carton. The running game is just completely gone. I told you last week with the Washington update that I expected they would get some balls quickly out to Eckler and just instead of running the ball, just take the screen passes. And Jaden Daniels was able to go over the prop bet that I gave you, over 22.5, and he got that. So part of it was doing those dink and dunk passes instead of running, and they did not run the ball. When you don't run the ball and you do it that poorly, you're coming away with a win probably 1 out of 10 times. So for them to have won that game, that just goes to show you how good the defense played, because they were lights out in the second half against Baker Mayfield and company. They just completely blanketed them at halftime. Even though the score was tied, it looked like Tampa Bay had a huge advantage, especially passing the ball. So this should be still, I believe, the most fun to watch. Maybe not the fact that it's going to be 60, 70 points, but the fact that it's indoors and it's not terrible cold. Those weather conditions really make games a lot harder to bet. They're a lot harder to handicap. You watch receivers drop balls in the cold. You're not going to see too many drop balls in this game. In fact, the Washington receivers have come out of nowhere. The second, third, fourth guys making tremendous catches, tremendous run after catches, so they could give this Detroit Lions team a run for the money. And, of course, again, Detroit had off last week. Sometimes the first game back is a little shake off some rust. And being a Washington fan, I hope that happens. And not expecting Washington to come out of there with a win. They got their signature win that they needed for Daniel, so he doesn't have to go into next year or future years saying, let's get that first one. I'm just happy they got that one. It was a nice win, a nice team win. This team's overachieved all year long. But again, this is the type of team nobody wants to play. I say this a lot. This time it just happens to be my team. And I'm really probably the hardest critic on any team that's my favorite team. So this should be a good one. I think it should stay reasonably close. I would be real surprised that this is a blowout on Saturday night. So enjoy this game. Make sure you check out our other videos at Gary Wins Videos. I already have the first game up, and I will get the other 2 videos out here tonight. And don't forget, we'll start to load up some more college basketball videos here as well as the college basketball season right now in full gear. You have some great matchups tomorrow on Saturday, which I love. And one of my favorite times of the year, January, February, my 2 favorite months to bet. Any sport, college basketball, my favorite sport of all. So have a great weekend, everybody. Drive safe, especially if you're in the back east areas with the bad snowy weather. Please drive safe always and never bet what you cannot afford to lose. God bless.